GAC, what is up? This is Coach Johnson speaking. This is Monday, Section 2.2 podcast. I hope you're doing well today. I know a couple things I just need to go over before I get through this podcast. First of which, I want to thank you so much in advance for the continued help and continued perseverance through this week. I know ideally it's not the best thing in the world to have your teacher out for a week. But with the situation and circumstances with my daughter, I will be honest, I'm really excited to be home this week and spend some time with her. With that being said, I'm offering up a lot of resources, a lot of help for you so that you are able to not just be left out on an island, but that you have help online and that you have help at night. And I'll explain that right now. First of which, I want to make sure I explain this. Within this podcast, we're going to go over 2.2, but you'll notice that really this podcast is pretty short. Really, this one right here that you're watching is kind of a support of the initial one or the original one that I would like for you to watch. Some of you will only have to watch the first podcast, and some of you might have to watch both of them. And you may even get to the point where you might have to watch it again and again, and that's okay. So here's kind of the progression of how this will go. Throughout this week, there are 4 class periods where you'll meet. On each of those days, you're going to go to a section. For instance, this right here, the website, Alg3 gac2.weebly.com. Remember too, all information is posted on Haiku, and the calendar and schedule is posted on there as well, to where you kind of can check off things that are to be done on those days. Now, the only thing that's really hard set in stone is the MML. Okay, so just be sure that those are completed within the time frame. The other ones, if you have extra questions, we can make those due on the Monday and or Tuesday when we get back. But please do not wait till the last minute. Use the time wisely you have in class to be able to get that done. All right. Now, as you scroll down, for instance, section 2.2, you will notice that within each of these sections, there's a podcast associated with each one. Now, some of them have 2, and I would like for you to watch 2. Some of them have 2, and I only want you to watch 1. And either way, make sure that you look on the Haiku calendar, and that will help you to identify which ones I'd like for you to watch there. So what you would do on section 2.2 is watch this podcast first. Now, once you watch this podcast, what you would do, you can look down below for some test questions or just a test sheet that would help you out. And then after that, what you would do is you would go then to the podcast you are currently watching to be able to help and support any questions you have off that previous section. I do this so that you have plenty of time, plenty of teaching to be able to help you within each section going forward. Now, because there's one here, and then there's also going to be one on Haiku, which is the one you're watching right now, or I guess on YouTube, you can watch that in either section. The big thing that you need to note is this. I'm offering 2 days. Tonight, Monday, from 8 to 8:30, you can log in on a YouTube link that I will post here shortly. And what you'll do is you'll see that link, click on it, and at 8 to 8:30, we'll go through, and if you have questions, just like a study session at night for tests, you'll be able to ask questions going forward there. I'll be there for about 30 minutes, maybe 45 depending upon how Emmy's doing. But about 30 to 45 minutes, I'll answer questions and go through any section stuff that you have. On the next one that I'll do is on Wednesday night. So I'll do Monday and Wednesday night, same time, same place. It will be a different link, so be sure on that. Different link. Check on Haiku, make sure that that's taken care of. And again, if you have questions, my big thing is this. I know I'm not there, and I know that I can't. It's a lot harder to be able to be there, it's a lot harder to be here and try to teach you. I get that. But at the same time, I'm trying to offer as many resources as possible while at the same time being fair to my family and Emmy. And so we'll go from there. Also tonight, I'm going to hopefully on Monday night from 8 to 8:30, I'm hopefully going to show you Emmy. So that should be fun as well. All right, now let's get started. What I'd like to do real quick is instead of going through this whole lesson, I already went through a lot of this stuff on the previous podcast on that section 2.2. So in order to just kind of go through what needs to be gone through, a couple things first. Now, before we graph these as if we had a t-chart, but this time what we're doing is we're looking at our h comma k. Now, to find h comma k, you notice that if it's on the inside, we go opposite, right? And if it's on the outside, we go up and down. And if a is a different value, this can become skinny or flattened. We call that either a stretch or a shrink, right? Now, if a is positive, it will go up, and if a is negative, it will go down. We call that a reflection if it's negative, and then we kind of go from there. Now, the ones that I want to look at are ones that are opposite from the previous podcast in case we needed some help. So let's do this. Let's look at where the vertex is. Again, there is no a on the outside, but we know it's positive. So we know the graph is going to go upwards in some direction. I always do this just to let myself know what it's doing on the graph. We then know that this is going to go left 3, the vertex is, and then going to go up 1. Remember, it's opposite on the inside. So this vertex will be at -3, 1. So we're going to put that right there. So at -3, 1, we have our vertex, and we know it's going up. So to be able to make sure that we know exactly where it needs to go, I always take my x and y, and what I do with that is I kind of plug in certain values. So let's plug in 0, and let's plug in -1. Okay? Again, both are on the right side. Notice that, because I'm going to show you what we're going to do going forward. So 0 plus 3 is 3. 3 squared is 9. 9 plus 1 is 10. So when I plug in 0, I get out 10, and I know it's kind of up in there, okay? Up in there, up in there. All right, plug -1 in. -1 plus 3 is 2. 2 squared is 4. 4 plus 1 is 5. So when I plug in -1, I get 5. So we know we got something that looks like this. Now, since I know that this graph is going to do something like so, okay, we know that these same points can be reflected to the other side. So if I go 1, 2, 3, 4, up 4 over 2, I can go up 4, left 2. And based on that point, there we go, we know that the parabola will kind of do the same thing on the other side. And so that's kind of an easy way to be able to graph it there, okay? Now, what if for some reason we have it in what we call standard form? Now, the previous form we call vertex form because it's easy to find the vertex. This is called standard form. A lot of times with this, we find our points by doing specific things, okay? First thing is we do -b over 2a, and where b is the middle value and a is the first value. But remember, it's -b over 2a. Once I find that value, I then plug it back into the equation to get what the y is. Once I find that, I know that that is my vertex. Now to find my y-intercept, so that's the first one, find my y-intercept, we do 0, c. So whatever the c is, or the value that's by itself on the outside, we know that it'll cross the y-axis at 0, c. So that one's pretty easy too. Now, if I was trying to find a quadratic formula, or I'm sorry, if we were trying to find an x-intercept, we can use the quadratic formula, because if anytime I'm plugging 0 or finding the x-intercept, I can plug 0 in for y, or f of x, okay? So we're going to look at that here in a second. And then finally, if a is positive, we go up. If a is negative, then we go down, okay? Now, you may not have gotten all that. Let's use an example, and let's see if we can show this. Now, since this a is negative, we know that initially this thing is going down for real, okay? It's going down. Now, question. Should have watched the first podcast. If you did, how do I find what the vertex is? I want you to yell it right now. Go. I can't hear you. JP, I'm hearing you right now. All right, very good, Riley. All right, so we're going to do -b over 2a, where b is 4, and again, we just plug 4 in. Keep that negative. Over 2 times a is -1. Okay, so we're going to plug that in. Make sure you take the signs with it. Now, once I get this, I get -4 over -2. And then once I simplify, I get 2. So the x in my vertex is positive 2. Again, how is that? Because when I get in standard form, I can't just look at it like I did in the previous one and do h comma k. No, in this one, I have to actually do -b over 2a. Once I take that 2, I plug it back in for x to get minus. Now remember, the 2 is only what plugs in for x. Don't take that negative. The negative's on the outside, okay? 2 squared plus 4 times 2 minus 1. So let's do this. 2 squared, don't take that negative. Square 2 first, PEMDAS, right? The middle name of the enemy. -4 plus 8 minus 1. So when I get that, I get a positive 3. And again, that would be my y of my vertex. So once I get negative b over 2a, I plug it back in for x values. And then once I get that, then at that point, I find what the y is. So I've got 2, 3. So there's my vertex. I know this is going down. A couple things will help with this. Number one, finding what the y-intercept is, okay? Now, you could also do it in a t-chart, but I'd like to know where the y-axis or where it crosses the y-axis or y-intercept is. We know whatever's on the outside, that -1, this value is the value that will be my y-intercept because it is our c. Remember, our c, 0, c, is our y-intercept. So we go 0, -1. Note that if it goes left 2, down 4, this will also go down 4, right 2. So it's because it's got to be kind of reflected there. Now, to make sure that we got our x-intercept, that's very important. We can now do the quadratic formula. So to find our x-intercepts, we just found our y. We could do x equals negative b plus or minus the, yep, I hear y'all, b squared minus 4ac all over 2a, dab it up, dib-dab, dibby-dab. All right, so 4 is what plugs in for b, -1's plugged in for a, and -1's plugged in for c. So this should be x equals negative 4 is what's plugged in for b, plus or minus the square root of b squared, 4 squared, minus 4a is -1, c is -1, just plug and chugging, okay? Make sure you take the signs with it. That's a big mistake a lot of people make. All over 2a, a is -1. So now I've got -4 plus or minus the square root of 16, -4 times -1 times -1. 2 negatives make a positive. So 1 times 1 times -4 is -4. And then all over 2a, or -2. Now, to get this, a lot of times we like to keep it as is. For instance, beforehand, we just kept it -4 plus or minus the square root of 12 all over -2. However, in this example, it would be beneficial for you to actually get out what decimal this is. So -4 plus square root of 12, and then divide that by -2. Then get -4 minus square root of 12 all over -2. And then once I get that, then I can kind of move forward on that problem and kind of use it going forward on that, all right? So again, that's kind of what we're looking at there to find what those x-intercepts are. Even though we've already graphed it, if I said find the x-intercepts, it's important to be able to know how to do that going forward. Also the y-intercept as well, okay? Now, again, I'm just plugging in these values real quick, trying to get out this calculator here. All right, -4 plus square root of 12. You might want to do this in your calculator as well, just to make sure you got it. I then press enter, then I divide by -2. And I got 0.27 approximately, okay? So if I was doing 0.27 is my first one, my next one, let's do the negative. So we'll do -4 minus this time, because again, remember it's plus or minus. The square root of 12, let's see what we get there. Get a little decimal, -7.20. Divide that by -2. And we get 3.59, really 3.60, okay? So again, 3.6 somewhere in here, okay, and 0.27 somewhere in here. The idea is that once we do that, we have all the things we need to be able to not only graph it, but to identify x, y-intercept, and then obviously the vertex there. I've also done another one in the other podcast, so if you need to look at another one, you could definitely do that going forward. I believe it's this one right here, okay? Now, again, I understand that, again, if you have questions tonight, 8 to 8:30, if you could go on there, we can look at some homework questions. I'm going to allow you to just, when you do that, log in, text me questions, and then we'll take it and go from there, okay? Hey, thank you all so much for today. Y'all have been so helpful in just making sure you watch these podcasts. So if you have any questions, 8 to 8:30 tonight, and we'll go through that together. Thank you. Have a great day, and appreciate you for understanding everything. Bye, y'all.